Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Adam, and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from my husband's best friend ruined her own life by excluding me. She doesn't say anything outright, but her actions are almost bizarre. They're so petty, I sincerely would say if I thought I had done something to warrant this, but she's been pretty cold to me since day one. The first day I met her, she referred to me as temporary. Still, she was invited to our wedding. I always make an effort to be cordial and I don't have the energy to care beyond that. Her excluding me from things has always been a pattern. For example, my husband's Christmas present last year was a gift certificate for rock climbing. She had already picked a date and friends to go with. I didn't make the cut. She also always buys him things when she travels and makes sure to address them only to him when she sends them. I could go on, but I think you'll get it. She's not horrible, but noticeably rude. By the way, she absolutely has a crush on my husband. I know this. He would never cheat, so I don't care. Things came to a head last week when he explained she was having a birthday dinner with just close friends. I wasn't invited, she made that clear. It later came out that the intimate dinner she pitched had turned into a house party with over 50 people invited. The Facebook invite says it's an open invite. I've had it. I told my husband I don't think he should go. It's gotten to the point that this is openly disrespectful. To his credit, my husband agreed with me, but he's very, very sad because they've been friends since childhood and he knows this will ruin it. I told him I don't have a ton of sympathy because if this is enough to ruin their friendship, it was not one worth having. He asked if he could take her out for drinks, just the two of them to celebrate, but I wasn't thrilled. I said he was a grown man and could do what he wanted, but I feel it's pretty effed up. Finally, he asked if we could sit down to talk with her and all take accountability. I said sure, but that I don't see what good it'll do. I also said I wouldn't apologize unless she could point to something specific that I've done to warrant it. I've been nothing but nice to a person who has been repeatedly disrespectful. Maybe the repeated pattern is making me a little harsh in the situation. Am I the A***** hole? Of course, you're not the A**** hole, OP, and I gotta say what's up with your husband? If a friend of mine would do that, like specifically and consistently to tell me that my wife isn't invited somewhere, I'd tell her it's her choice. I'd also say I'm disappointed and I think it's sad, but it is her choice and that I won't be going to the party and then I would definitely reevaluate that friendship. But then your husband is kind of bending over backwards to try to appease this person who is actively disrespecting you, and he can see it and he acknowledges that it is messed up, OP. It shouldn't have taken you to say that you were uncomfortable. He should have said something sooner, a long time ago from the moment that she referred to you as temporary. That's when he should have called her out and put her in her place, respect my partner, but he didn't. So I think you need to sit down with your husband and talk about proper boundaries. Now the mature adult thing to do for your husband would be fine, he's not going to the party, you're not going either. That's that. But if I'm being very honest here, here's what I would do. It's an open invitation on Facebook, I'm showing up to the party with my husband. What's she going to do, kick me out? It's going to look horrible on her and if anything, you know what, fine. I'll call her out on it and see what happens. I don't know, it could be that my breakfast cereal this morning came with extra iron and I feel bold, but yeah, I'd go. So in summary, OP, no, I don't think you're the A**** hole. I think you need to talk to your husband and why not just show up at that party? And what do you guys think about this whole situation? What is your judgment? Let me know in the comments section and now, let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Confused Cochin says I think hubby enjoys the attention. If he's a smart man, he will pull back. I find it a bit concerning that he wanted to take her on a one-on-one date to make up for not going to the party.
Not the ****, but your husband should be protective of his marriage, and OP responds. I know how it sounds, but she's very dramatic, and I think he wanted to take her out to avoid a blow-up with their friend group. While I get his aversion to conflict, at some point, they all need to grow up. Northern lit up says not the ****. Your husband needs to put a stop to this nonsense, and this is a first logical step. My guess is that once his lifelong friend realizes he's not showing up without you to stuff, she's going to lose interest in the friendship, and OP responds. Thank you. I'm not telling him. He can't be friends with her, but boundaries are important. This seems like a reasonable one, and it's not my problem if she can't have a healthy friendship. BJ in 759 says, by the way, she absolutely has a crush on my husband. I know this. He would never cheat, so I don't care. If you only knew how many men who would never cheat end up cheating, and it often starts with poor boundaries, such as repeatedly being perfectly okay with a woman who has a crush on you planning outings, say, rock climbing, for example. That include you but exclude your wife, you're not the holy. But honestly, this is a great conversation to bring up in marriage counseling. OP responds, we're in marriage counseling more for maintenance than conflict. I'm not naive enough to say he's never capable of cheating, but I don't really live my life stressing over it. I trust him. We have a good relationship overall, and honestly, he gets pretty annoyed with her. OP's edit. For your information, my husband is a wonderful person who has always said he'd pick me over her and probably his childhood friend group every time. I never pushed this because I don't care very much. I have absolutely no doubt he'll do the right thing if I ask. I just want to make sure that what I'm asking is the right thing. Also, my husband is reading these responses, and it's been helpful. I can see it so clearly on the outside, but he's been sucked into crazy town for so long that it's good for him to see how juvenile she's being. Sometimes, in very rare moments, Reddit wake-up calls are healthy. Okay, well, the community agrees that OP is not the holy and that she needs to talk or do something regarding her husband because what he's doing is not cool. And even though there were some allegations of possible cheating, OP defends her husband, and she says she believes him. So now it's time to move on to the update to see what happens next and how this story ends. But, of course, before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after this video. Now, let's move on with the update. I don't expect anyone to actually read this all, but I didn't know what part of the drama to cut off. I'm having a hard time processing everything, to be honest. Welcome to Crazy Town, buckle up. Well, y'all called it. There was infidelity, but not from my husband. First off, my husband is not a bad guy, despite the overwhelming verdict. This is one of the biggest blind spots, but we have a really lovely life and marriage. I truly believe we both FD up on this one by allowing a toxic person to manipulate us with her anger. It happened so slowly over time that neither of us realized how insane the situation had gotten. So I'll say this is a rare moment when Reddit helped a relationship. Now I'm going to call birthday girl Carrie to clarify a few quick things. Carrie has been in my husband's life since grade school. Their entire group of friends has been close since childhood. They mean a lot to him, and I'll always respect them for getting him through some tough times. Yes, even her. I should also note they survived a tragedy together as kids, so there is a level of trauma bonding with this crew. Sometimes it's a little unhealthy, but apart from Carrie, I really like all of them individually. To be honest, I've always felt my husband didn't like Carrie very much, but didn't want to lose his friends. When someone has an issue with her, she blows up on all of them to the point that she makes everyone miserable. It's gotten pretty bad in the past. She always claims to have a mental health crisis and manipulates how she retails conflict so that she's always the victim. Everyone in her life is a textbook people pleaser, including my husband, which I'm fairly certain is by design. I also want to clarify that my husband and Carrie have never been romantic. That was a common theory in my last post. She calls him her best friend, but their relationship is pretty dependent on the group dynamics and her unyielding dinginess. Everyone on Reddit was very concerned about her having a crush on him because it opens up the possibility of cheating. Let me be clear, he's super hot and could always find a willing partner if he wanted to cheat. I don't care what her intentions are. I trust the person I'm married to. Also, I kept trying to avoid saying this in my last post, but in all honesty, she's not very cute, and he is definitely not attracted to her on any level. Anyway, my husband and I talked for a long time and decided the situation was no longer sustainable, even if he lost his friends. Nothing was worth such blatant disrespect. He apologized a lot for letting it get that far. Alright, on to the drama. There's another girl in his friend group I'll call Sarah. I've always really liked her, so we invited her and her husband over for dinner. About halfway through the meal, my husband brought up the issue we have with Carrie not inviting me to her party and how I've been excluded many times throughout the years. Sarah looked dumbstruck and stated, well, it wouldn't matter if OP was invited anyway because she refuses to be in the same room as Carrie, right? Wouldn't she be angry? I have never ever stated anything like that to anyone. We pushed her to say more and to make a very long story. Sarah explained that Carrie told some people in their friend group years ago and told them a story, according to Carrie. It was too painful for me to be around her because of the connection she had with my husband again. These two have never even kissed, and I always got the feeling she annoyed him. She instructed them all to stop inviting me to places, so they didn't offend me by forcing me to turn them down. She even told them not to bring it up with my husband because it was such a sore subject. Apparently, she has been telling them for years that I get angry every time I get an invite because I find it disrespectful, and it's caused a huge rift in my marriage. They all thought this was weird but didn't want to make things worse, so they let it go. Upon reflection, this actually made a lot of sense. We've always been invited to smaller events or things when Carrie was out of town. I had a feeling that either this was a group of really amazing actors or something else was going on. Everyone but Carrie has been really nice to me. This story was unequivocally confirmed. Not only did two other people in their group of friends later reiterate this exact narrative and apologize, but I also watched Sarah text Carrie while we were at the table. When Sarah asked why I wasn't invited to Carrie's party, she responded, "You know how painful it is for her to be around me. I hope one day we can all be in a room together without it being weird, but we need to respect that she doesn't want to hang out with us." Sarah was effing furious, and my husband was livid. He ended up calling her on speakerphone and asked her where she got the idea I was threatened by their connection. Carrie kept saying she didn't know what he was talking about. Then she claimed Sarah must be confused or lying because she never said that. That's when Sarah chimed in, and Carrie realized she was on speakerphone with Sarah in the room. Carrie immediately yelled at them for tricking her and went off about how she didn't deserve to be attacked. Then she hung up. She sent Sarah close to 20 texts while she was still at our house about this betrayal. She also sent Sarah's husband a text asking him how it feels to be married to a drug addict, referencing the fact that Sarah did a certain drug in college, a fact she's pretty ashamed of, so this was a low blow. She sent my husband a text too, begging him not to listen to anything Sarah says because she's blinded by jealousy. We all four just threw up our hands and finally left. I thought this would be the worst of it. Sarah and my husband ended up getting a little drunk, and the two of them ranted for an hour, comparing stories. I swear a switch was flipped. During that conversation, a lot of stuff came out about how many problems she's caused throughout the years and how she's always been controlling. I just got my popcorn and marveled because her crazy went beyond the scope I anticipated. Sarah announced she was done with Carrie but alluded that things might get ugly. I just assumed she meant Carrie would be dramatic, which I now see was naive. Sarah told everyone in their group the following day. There wasn't an official vote to kick her off the island, but let's just say nobody fought too hard to keep her. Apparently, there were a lot of issues with her. Carrie has since gone off the rails. I've never seen anyone crash and burn so violently. She called my husband 42 times in 2 hours. She showed up at one of their friends' houses and tried to kick the door down. She also threatened to call the police on one of the girls in the group for not returning a bracelet, a $40 bracelet. At this point, everyone in their group of friends and I started a group chat where we were just sending each other hourly updates of the texts and social media posts. They became increasingly unhinged and abusive. Most were empty insults, but a few were so mean they made me tear up. I had to stop following her on Instagram because I was getting secondhand embarrassment from all of her weird passive-aggressive posts about her former fake friends. She made a bunch of vague threats, which I didn't think much of at the time. As you probably saw coming, she sent me a string of incoherent texts. I was kind of entertained by the fact that the worst thing she could say about me was that I was career-obsessed. I also have a disorder that prevents me from processing certain social cues, and she said something highly offensive about that I won't repeat. I did screenshot it and send it to the group before I blocked her. I felt bad for some of the crap she sent to my husband. He had a hard time blocking her because, despite everything, he was really worried about her hurting herself and is a person who deeply cares. At one point, he just handed me his phone and told me to tell him if he needed to call the cops for a wellness check. The texts were hard to read because they really played on his insecurities. She went off about how she was friends with him when he was still a loser virgin and that it was only a matter of time before I left him. I'm not leaving him. He got cheated on in college, and she texted that he deserved it and that I was probably cheating on him now. I'm not. Finally, when she brought up a friend of his who passed away in an attempt to get him to respond, we agreed to block her on every medium. She is so much crazier than I thought. There was seriously a moment when I considered a restraining order. Perhaps this is way more drama detail than you all want, but she tried to break up 2 other couples in the group by disclosing infidelity. Someone called this in the comments, basically saying she has something on these dudes for them to keep her around. I just always assumed they were super conflict avoidant, like my husband, and feared a meltdown. The first couple wasn't a big deal. I had never known this about them, but apparently they're open, so his wife already knew at first. It was satisfying to watch her flip out when this revelation didn't land. They posted screenshots in the group chat. This guy's wife basically laughed at her and told her she was delusional. The other couple was so much more depressing. Carrie and he didn't actually have sex, but he admits that they drunkenly fooled around twice a few months after he started dating the woman who is now his wife. No kids. I hope they overcome it. Cheating is never okay, but he's grown up a lot since then. This one was soul-crushing because I really liked those two together and I don't know if they're going to make it. It was a shock to everyone. To make matters worse, Carrie posted about them all over her social media, so everyone knows he cheated. We haven't heard much from them since. This was by far the hardest part of the saga. Finally, she threatened to release photos of everyone partying when they were in high school. I'm being serious. There was nothing life-ruining, but certainly not things you want on the internet. The factor that saved them is that they were all underage, and some photos were very sexual with partial nudity. I think it's effing weird she kept these. I'm a lawyer and helped them craft a message explaining the consequences of distributing images of minors that are sexual in nature. I'm hoping this one goes away, but if she does post them, it won't be the end of the world. Most people won't really be fazed that a group of 30-year-olds did drugs and hooked up in their teens. It just sucks. They have to deal with it. I knew she was off, but she reached another level of crazy. This literally all happened over the course of a few days. She claimed to care about these people like family last weekend, and now she's blackmailing them. I feel weird labeling this as a happy ending because I think this woman needs help more than anything, and she did real damage. I have a hard time mustering sympathy, though she spent years manipulating people and was so calculating in her attempts to box me out. If I'm being honest, she still scares me. It's only been a few days and she's done a lot of damage. I worry about what she'll do in the future, and I'm a bit concerned that this was all under the surface and no one seemed to notice. It's just a mess. There is good news. I've always had my own group of friends, so I wasn't exactly pining to be included, but I feel like I'm meeting my husband's friends for the first time and it's been nice. I'm still, understandably, hesitant because I spent years thinking they disliked me, and this whole situation has me in such a bizarre emotional whiplash, but I appreciate their efforts and this ordeal has helped me understand them to an extent. The girls in their group put me on a text chain. They've had it going for years. Carrie got kicked out and I love their banter. We're going to dinner with another couple this week and I recently received a late invite to one of the girls' wedding showers. Everyone has sincerely just seemed a lot happier since all this went down, despite the pain that came with it. For those wondering, my husband and I are really good. We're going to bring it up with our therapist. But we've made a commitment to never let toxic people come between us again. There's a moral buried in here somewhere, but I'm not sure what it is. I think it's something about how transparency and boundaries are important in all relationships, including friendships. Well, OP might sound harsh, but as opposed to you, I am going to call this a happy update for you and everyone else, except for Carrie. I do agree with you, OP, that she does need help. I mean, you mentioned that this whole group went through some trauma together when they were kids, and maybe this is what she got from it, but that still doesn't excuse all of the horrible things she's done to you and everybody else. Apparently, over the years, the controlling, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the tantrums, all of that stuff. Anyways, OP, here's wishing all the very best in the future for you and your husband and the group friend to heal and to move forward, and hopefully, you get to know them very well and become really good friends. Take care, OP, and thank you so much for sharing, and that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.